Hello, everyone. This is Lee Papa, and welcome. I am here today with Dr. Charles Lange. We're going to kick around some topics of wellness, of DNA, of enemas, of stress, of what else can we kick around? Intuition, spirituality. You don't usually hear all of those topics strung together when talking to a doctor. But this is not just any doctor. This is a very special doctor, Dr. Charles Lange. You're embarrassed now?
Thank you.
So he practices functional medicine, epigenetics, and wellness kinesiology. But he's also based here in the U.S., in Phoenix, Arizona. And I am thrilled to say that he is also one of my cherished doctors. And I welcome you with open arms, Charles Lange.
Hi, Lee. It's my pleasure to be here. And I really thank you for this opportunity to get the word out and to just chat. I think this is going to be really great. So where do we start? There is a lot, like you said. So
there certainly is a lot to cover, and as we have known from our appointment together that we also can have fun and laugh about these topics and really explore humanity, which is what I'm super excited about to bring forth today. So yes, let's just jump in. What is functional medicine? And actually, I'm going to go to this dual screen. There you go. So I can see you. There you go.
So functional medicine is taking everything into consideration. It's not just looking at one organ, one system in the body. It's looking at everything. It's looking at all the blood work, all the tests, and putting everything together, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together to find out what the problem is. So if I had to say, what's the one word that expresses what functional medicine is, I would say the word why. What you have to keep on doing is when you find something, you have to ask why. And then you find the reason for that. And again, you ask the reason why, and you keep going until you get that base problem or that base thing that's causing the problem. And everything else kind of falls into place. It's like playing dominoes.
How is that different from traditional medicine?
Traditional medicine will look at single systems. They won't look at, say you have a problem with your kidneys. They won't look at what's going on with your digestive system. They won't look at what's going on with your emotions. They won't look at what's going on in your environment. And that's a big part of functional medicine, which I didn't mention too, is that you're not even just looking at the body. You're looking at everything that affects you and affects the body, the emotions, the stress, the foods you eat. It's different from everybody. It's customized medicine, basically. So with natural medicine, with mainstream medicine, what they're doing is they're putting everything into a recipe. So everybody fits into that. You give them so much of a drug, or you give them so much of something to do. And it's the same for everybody, but not everybody's the same. And that's what functional medicine does.
It takes more time to delve into what is the cause of the symptoms, I would suspect.
Very much so. And that's the fun part of it. It's kind of like being a detective. And that's what I like. That's what I feel that I was born to do. I love people. I love what makes them. And seeing the individuality in everybody and seeing their makeup. And it's a great thing. It really is. And seeing people get better, that's the biggest thing. That's what really turns me on. And it never gets old.
We get old, but it never gets old. There's so much to ask you, but I want to get the baseline foundation of what it is that you do before we get into some specifics. But so you're a functional medicine doctor, but you also practice epigenetics, and that was such a foreign word to me, and I'm sure it's foreign to a lot of people. Could you explain what that is? And also, did you move into epigenetics after the functional medicine degree? And what kind of degree is a functional medicine degree? Do you go through the same schooling as a traditional medical doctor?
It's a work in progress. So just a short history or bio of myself. For 13 years, I worked in oncology, radiation oncology to be specific. So I worked with surgeons helping deliver the radiation by doing implants. I delivered the radiation using machines, or what are called accelerators. I helped to determine what the prescription would be that the physician would use, the amount of time. And that got kind of old because I started to see that, yes, it does increase the lifespan or the life of a person, but it doesn't increase their quality. And why would you want to live longer if your quality of life isn't that great? It just doesn't make sense to me. So I started to explore everything. So I went into chiropractic because I think chiropractic is very natural. The whole thing of your spine being aligned, your joints being aligned, of the nervous system, and that's what chiropractic is all about, firing the way that it should and getting the message to the organs in your body and your immune system. Again, that didn't seem to be quite enough. There seemed to be a little bit more to that. So I started looking into what it was that went along with that. So you start to see, well, it's how people eat. It's natural thing. It's their environments. I saw how people reacted to stress. And again, I started to explore that. And later on in life, after I got into that, then I went to classes for functional medicine. They say that once you get out of school, that's when you actually start to learn. And that's when you start to see things. And I stayed open and I tried to find all the best teachers, all the best people that had results, all of the best known people, and went to them and learned as much as I could. And that's where I got most of my knowledge. And I spent probably 12 to 16 years in school. 12 of that was my actual education for everything as far as the functional medicine and the radiation oncology, and just constantly learning. And it's still that way because things keep progressing. So eventually I got into the epigenetics. Now that didn't really come in until 2003 when the genome project was done and everything was mapped. Well, everybody thought that this is it. We know exactly how everything's going to work, how, what caused certain problems or that. That was just the beginning. That's when all the research started.
What year was that again?
2003. So I think it was like April 16th or something like that when the announcement came out. Don't quote me on that, but that's what pops in my head. So in relatively speaking, that's not a real long time. So it's been developing constantly over that period of time, and that's why I'm constantly learning more and more. It's almost a weekly thing with all the research in that. Now, the first person, I know this is kind of extended out a little bit, but
that's good.
Person that really got into the main part of that was her name was Amy Yasko, Dr. Amy Yasko. She worked on probably the most studied part of genetics, and that's called methylation. And she works mostly with ADHD kids, mostly kids. And she was having great results. She's still having great results. And then along came Dr. Jay Dunn, and that's who I work with mostly now. And that's who does all the research for what I do. And there's a core group of us that works with that and works with her to develop new things and the order of how everything works.
So you talked about methylation, which is another foreign word.
Right.
What is methylation, and then what does that have to do with epigenetics and DNA?
So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question as far as epigenetics, but epigenetics, if you split the word up, epi means more of or beyond, and genetics, self-explanatory. So again, just like functional medicine, you're looking at everything that causes those problems. You're looking at the whole picture. So methylation, we're going to come back to the other, but we need to cover what methylation does. Methylation is a small part of the genetics. Methylation is like the switch on your wall that works or causes the other genes to express themselves. By expressing themselves, I mean, you can have a mutation. You can have something that could show up. You could have the gene for Alzheimer's. You could have the gene for Parkinson's. But if you go through your whole life and that gene doesn't express itself, you don't even know that you had that particular gene until somebody...
So it's kind of like a weakness in the genetic code that may lie dormant unless there is a stressor that triggers it.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's like a glass of water. So depending on how weak it is, if you have a full glass of water and you have both good genes from both parents, it's working 100% of the time, or better yet, it's working 100% efficiently. If you have one bad gene, it's working 70% efficiently. And if you have both bad genes from both your parents, you can have some problems because it's only working 30% of the time. So you go from this big glass to this tiny little glass that's about the size of a shot glass, and it doesn't take as much for it to overflow. And once it overflows, that's when the gene expresses itself. That's when you get the Alzheimer's. That's when you get the inflammation, the arthritis, when you get sick, when you get disease or disease, which is what we like to call it. And that's what causes the problems. But it also can cause emotional problems. And that's one of the biggest reasons I got into it, because of depression. I've had a lot of experience with depression. And it's no picnic, it's no fun, but there are ways that you can help those genes re-express themselves so that person doesn't have those problems, or they can handle those problems.
So methylation is not a process?
It is. What it does is it's one system that it does. It's like a group of things. Like I was saying, everything works together, and it's how one thing causes another thing, causes something else to happen, and it can trigger those other things. It has a lot to do with B vitamins, how they're processed. It has a lot to do with vitamin D, how it's processed. It has a lot to do with your energy. Methylation does 1 billion processes, per second in your body. And it's only second to the amount of things that it does to energy, and it actually figures into energy in your body. But it's the process that pulls everything together, basically.
So methylation is something that's automatic. I mean, we have methylation processes happening within us, all of us. It's
right.
We go to you to get done.
Right. So what I do is I look at the methylation specifically, and I look at it in a certain order. Okay? If you just take one thing, and that's what a lot of physicians are doing. Methylation is starting to be a catchword right now. But what a lot of physicians are doing is they're taking one part of that. They're taking one gene in that, which is folic acid being converted into folate. And that's what happens is you'll get something that's causing that not to take place. So the genes keep that from taking place. So what you do is you give the body what it needs to help it to take place, or you give the person the actual folate. Now, the difference between folic acid and folate is folic acid is the inactive form, folate is the active form. So that if the gene isn't working, it doesn't convert into the active form. The only problem is it doesn't just sit there like that, and your body doesn't necessarily get rid of it. It can cause other problems. Vitamin D is a big thing. If it doesn't convert the way that it should, it doesn't matter how much vitamin D you get, your body's either going to get rid of it if you have this particular mutation, or what we call a SNP, standard nucleotide proteomorphic. I quiz you on that.
Yeah, we'll go with SNP.
I just like to say that. That's all. I had to fit that in there some way. So that.
Holy cow! Okay.
What will happen is your body will either get rid of it, no matter how much you get, no matter how much sun you get, or it'll put it in places where it's not supposed to go. Now, the thing with vitamin D, it's a hormone. It's not just the vitamin. So it affects all the neurotransmitters and the hormones in your body.
I mean, you said vitamin B or vitamin D?
D, as in David.
D, okay.
D is very important. It's extremely important. That's why I chose that. But when it takes it to some place where it's not supposed to go, it takes other things with it. So it'll take calcium with it. That's why certain things are vitamin D enhanced or fortified. But if it takes it into the joints, outside the joints, it can cause arthritis. If it takes it into the vessels, into the blood vessels or the circulatory system, it can cause plaquing because you get too much calcium in there. If you have inflammation, then your vessels become like sandpaper, and it grabs onto things and it collects and accumulates, and that's what causes plaquing. And it does so much more. It can be deposited in your brain. It can be deposited in your thyroid. So the idea is to get it, supply the body what it needs to direct it to where it's supposed to go. It's like, the guy with the flashlights in the airport that directs the airplane to the terminal. Mm-hmm. The plane has to get to the right airport, and et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, when I came to see you, I which was about a month ago, right? Just about a month ago, or maybe a little bit in a couple of days. And I had, I knew that there were adrenal issues. I knew that there was a thyroid issue. I knew that the list of symptoms that I had were like, 10 or 15. But somehow, even though I had a doctor that I was seeing, a naturopathic doctor, and we were on board with what was in alignment for me to use for these things, somehow the symptoms were growing, and I knew that there was something that tied all of them together. And when I came to see you and we did the testing, which I want to talk about how you get that testing done, one of the underlying factors was vitamin D. Now, so if I'm not assimilating the vitamin D, the rest of it couldn't work properly. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly, and that's a very common thing. It's happening to a lot of people. It's not just in places where it's cloudy that people are getting depressed. It's happening. I'm finding out it's happening here a lot where there's sunshine all the time.
Why? Why do you think?
For some reason, whatever's in our foods, what's ever in the chemicals and the additives in that, what that will do is that will actually change genes and make them into a SNP or a mutation. And I don't think if you went back far enough, you would see as many mutations in people's cells as you're seeing now. It's the chemicals, basically.
Chemtrails. We can go into that in
all of that. That's a whole subject in itself.
So how do you get methylated? Like, how do you get your DNA tested?
So what I do, what I used to do is I used labs that were really expensive, and they even sent an analysis of what was going on in that, but it wasn't as extensive as what I use, and they were fairly expensive. So all we do is we have you order a kit from, now it's Ancestry.com. We used to use 23andMe, but we don't get as much on their chip, and their chip has all the DNA or the raw data on it as we get specifically from Ancestry.com. So they send a kit, you spit into a tube, you send the tube back, you register you register it with them, and then they send back the results. Now, one of the confusing things is when people get it back, they send me what Ancestry.com sends them, which is where they come from, Ancestry background, and that really great. It's
check.
Yeah. What I look at is all of that goes by the wayside. That's for them to look at. That's for them to explore. To get to that point, you have to extract all the DNA or the raw data, and that's what I get. They download that, they send that to me, and then I analyze it, and then we go from there.
And then when you say we go from there, so you look at where the SNPs are, and are there typically a lot of them? Are these things that you you can look at, like in layers? That's kind of part one of the question. And then part two, so you can change your DNA?
Again, it's like every person is an individual. Every person's DNA is different. Just like, some people have green eyes, some people have blue eyes, some people have, they're 5'8", some people are, 4'2". But your mutations, especially for the methylation or what switches things on, will or off, will vary with every single person. So I look at everything in a certain order, because again, if you only take care of one thing or you take care of things outside of that order, you can end up turning something off or turning something on that can cause problems. Just like the cogs in a machine. If the machine's working fine and all the cogs are turning in the right direction at the right speed, then everything's going to work the way that it should. But if one of those cogs slows down, it's going to slow down all the other cogs. If one of those cogs starts turning in another direction, it's going to start turning everything else in another direction, or it's going to stop things. So you have to take it in order to do that. So that's the first thing that I do. I look to see generally where all their mutations are. Now, the next thing you have to figure out is what it is that's being triggered. So I can find those mutations, but it might not be getting triggered. There's a very simple way of doing that, and that's using muscle testing. Now, you take one mutation, we'll say, where we start at the beginning, and there's a certain gene that's called an NDUF, and it has to do with energy, and it comes off of what's called the Krebs cycle. Some of that might cause nightmares for people that have had chemistry in that, because they had to memorize all of that, and other people probably just totally forgot that. But what happens is that if your body isn't producing enough energy, or the energy the way that it should, then that's because you're expressing that certain gene. If I look at it on paper, it might not be expressing itself. Plus, to get it to express itself, there's all kinds of other things, all other kinds of nutrition, all kinds of combinations of nutrition that can cause it or get it to work the way that it should.
Like allergies? Would allergies to...
Yeah, allergies is a very common thing. And believe it or not, that has a lot to do with neurotransmitters that have to do with depression in that. It's called the MAOB, but what it does is it also breaks down histamines. So you're also looking at that. So when you do that, what will happen is everything, again, starts to fall into place, and you muscle test them, see what it is that they need or what their body needs, and then you accumulate things. And what I mean by that is you don't just give them something, you have to see how all that works together. So by putting something into an energy field, the body is an amazing thing, and you can ask it. Basically is what you're doing with the muscle testing. I call it reflex testing because it's very gentle and you're just seeing how the muscle.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's called kinesiology, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But it is fascinating, and you're so in tune that it's like you're barely touching the hand or the arm. I mean, it's fascinating how you can get that kind of signal.
Yeah. If you're sensitive to it, you can actually tell even before you push, at least I can, you can actually tell even before you push on the arm how it's going to react. But you don't just go to somebody and say, okay, you're going to need this, you're going to need that, you're going to need a combination of this, that, or whatever. It's always nice for people to get confirmation of that, and so that you can see it. I like people to know exactly what's going on. It's their body. They need to be educated with it. I'm not just going to give them something, send them out the door and say, okay, I'll see you in a month, 2 months, good luck,
Thus, it's called functional medicine, right? Because it's
exactly, yeah.
Experience.
Yes.
What fascinates me is that the supplements that you prescribe are what actually shifts the DNA. Is that correct?
Right. That's what gets the DNA to re-express itself, because that's what the body needs, what the body can't supply itself with, or what the body can't activate. And that's what genes basically are. They're enzymes that activate certain proteins or other enzymes in the body or in the cells that do a job. And if it's not doing its job, then it's going to have that domino effect where it's going to affect everything else. The one thing, and this is really cool, this is pretty short, but sitting in an airport in Traverse City, and the weather was it was fantastic. The sun was out, the temperature was great, and I had to fly through Detroit. The weather in Detroit was fantastic. The weather, the sun was out, the temperature was great. There was no rain in the area or anything. I went into the airport at 6:30 in the morning after getting out really early. And I found out that my flight out of Detroit had canceled. And it's like, well, what the heck is all that about? Because there's no weather or anything, or bad weather. So when I asked him, he said that the connecting flight that was coming out of New York into Detroit, New York was having really bad weather, and they couldn't get any of the planes off the ground. Henceforth, the plane that came out of New York couldn't get to Detroit. That's it in a nutshell. That's how one thing that's having a problem or one thing that's imbalanced can cause everything else to go out of balance, even though that other...
Great analogy. Yeah, it makes it very clear. So then once someone is on a supplement to shift that DNA, if they would get their methylation tested or their DNA tested again, would it show differently?
Yes, it can, for several different reasons. First off, and probably the most important one, is sometimes things or mechanisms in the body will have a way of hiding. I had one patient who had problems with their thyroid, and it was showing up big time as far as problems with their vitamin D. Well, those two are really connected. So without getting into the chemistry or anything like that, but the body had to take care of the thyroid first before it actually took care of the vitamin D, because if both of those were done at the same time, she wouldn't have been able to handle it. So I looked at it, I tested her and everything, and it was really to the extreme, and I almost couldn't believe it, but I trusted what I was getting, sent her off, brought her back in 2 weeks, and the vitamin D showed up. So things can hide, things can change as you change things with whatever, supplement that you give them or whatever activity you give them to do. It's more than just the supplements. It can be, if they have stress, ways of lowering that stress, like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, or the things that they eat can make a difference too. So once those change, then other things will start changing or can't change or re-express or express themselves. Now, the second reason is none of us, and this is what makes life really cool. I think it makes life really cool. Things are constantly changing. Life is not a static. In other words, things come up. You might experience some kind of stress. You might go out, you might go on a trip, and you have to eat at restaurants all the time. You do things differently. Your experiences are different. And as those change, what's going to happen is your genes are going to handle those differently. And as that happens, things are going to change a little bit. So things might need tweaked a little bit, depending on what's going on in their life. But if you get it so that the percentages are higher than they were when they had the mutations that were being expressed the way that they should be, then it won't be as effective. It won't be as much, and that's why I say it might need tweaked. It depends on what's going on in that person's life. Everybody's different.
So is this a process that is ongoing? So are you on these supplements for the rest of your life, or is there a time where your body takes over and is strong enough to do its own job?
Some things you will be, and some things you won't be. It depends, again, on the mutations. If you have a strong mutation, and it's not just necessarily if you have both mutations from your mother and or your father, you can have one, and if it's in combination with other ones that are one, it can cause a problem. And that's where I analyze all of that. But if you have a severe problem, or you have the shot glass that I was talking about, the 30%, chances are, given the way our environment is now, given the way of all the stresses that we have and all of those outside factors that you figure into it, yes, you probably will be. But the way to look at it is it's like your own customized multiple vitamin. Some of those things you might be able to come off of, but you don't have to take a multiple vitamin with this, because this will be the only thing, because it's customized just for you. A vitamin or a multiple vitamin it's a mass recipe or a generalized recipe for everybody. But it's so much better if you can have your own personalized vitamin.
Can methylation actually cure disease? So if someone comes in with full-blown MS or an autoimmune disease, could doing this process cure them? Or I don't know if we like to use the word cure, or if we want to use the word
that is a tricky thing to say.
Make them optimal.
Right, it makes them optimum, and their body handles it. I don't cure anything. I don't treat anything. All I do is I follow the roadmap. I teach them what to do, and then the patient, they do their part. Okay, they, as a partner in what we're doing, I teach them what to do. I show them what to do, and then they have to take the responsibility as far as what they need to do. And when they do that, and the body starts to do and function the way that it should, then it will take care of those things. So it's the body that cures itself. It's the body that cures the cancer. It's the body that cures the ALS or the Parkinson's. When the body's functioning the way that it should, it has the best, most comprehensive drugstore that there is. You can take all the drugstores in the world, and it won't be as comprehensive as it is in one person's body. And the body knows how to do that. It knows what amounts to use, what combinations to use it in, and that's the cool thing. All we're doing is we're balancing it out so that it can do its job.
But I like what you're saying is about taking responsibility, because from a mindfulness teacher perspective, it's all about the awareness, someone's awareness, and taking responsibility for their own awareness with non-judgment. And it's the key factor to really healing and expanding, not only through happiness or feeling more well-being, but also spiritually. So what would you say is the part in the play of being well, of getting better? How important is taking your own responsibility and really mastering your emotions?
Extremely, extremely important. What the methylation does, or one of the things that it does as far as that, remember I had mentioned depression and emotions. So by balancing all of that, it's going to get your head above water so that you can see things more clearly. And you're able to work more efficiently, or you're able to be more mindful more clearly with getting all that static or all of those roadblocks away. So it makes it easier for you to do that. So once you get to that point, and you're able to stand outside of your body, and you're able to make the decisions as to whether you want to get involved with a certain emotion that you have, or you don't want to get involved with it. And that's where the responsibility comes in with what you're talking about. It's not your emotions. It's not your feelings. It's not your life having control of you. It's you having control of your life. It's you having control of your emotions. That's where all of this goes back to. You being able to create your life and who you are. We're so much more powerful than what we think. We're not these beings that go through our life that other people affect us by, going to a doctor's office, sitting across the desk, them giving us a pill and just popping the pill. That's not taking responsibility for your life. It's getting to that point where you can make the decisions for you, and nothing else but you affects you.
What a perfect place to take a break as we segue into emotions and the whole idea of mind, body, and spirit. And we'll take this next segment and delve a little deeper into those areas. And I did promise to talk about a couple of things that I don't think we did. I want to ask you what before we break, what your feeling on fasting is and what your feeling on enemas are.
So both of those, again, it can be a very individual thing. That can be very, very beneficial if certain things. Now, methylation, one of the things that I didn't explain, a lot of it takes place in your liver, and your liver cleanses things, as you know, as well as doing other things like...
Hold on 1 second. Something's going on with the video, and I'm not hearing you. It seems kind of garbled. So let's try again and see what you got there. If you could repeat.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So one of the things that I didn't mention about methylation is that a lot of it takes place in your liver. That's the main thing. That's what causes what's or extracts what are called methyl donors, or the particular molecule that creates inactive substances like B12 or D, or things to work the way that they should. But because it's the liver does a lot of things. It cleans out your body. It cleans your blood. The liver is very multifaceted. It conjugates or puts together hormones. So if you affect that, if you have a lot of problems there, you want to be really careful that you don't download it too fast, or you don't cause things to happen too fast, because you'll get really sick. That's one of the things that you can tell when the genes are looked at, or the methylation's looked at. Now, short story is, yes, they are. If you're able to do it, then they are both very, very effective. Enemas help to clean out, I would say more colonics are better, because they help to clean out your large intestines. And your large intestines, as you know, is very, or you may know, it's very effective for everything that takes place in your body, because all of the bacteria that's in there is what keeps you healthy, or helps to keep you healthy. 80% of your immune system is in your digestive system. So that being said, if you can clean that out, if you can improve the environment, and that's what colonics will help to do, is help to clean out the environment. As far as fasting, I don't usually promote long-term fasting. The kind of fasting that I usually recommend is intermittent fasting. And most people can do that. It's when you eat, and the distance or the amount of time between when you stop eating at night or in the evening and when you start eating the next day. For women, that's generally about 12 to 14 hours. And for men, it's 14 to 16 hours. And timing is everything, as they say. You give your body a chance to rest, to heal your digestive system, to recoup before you start working it again. So that's how that will work. If again, it depends on the individual, but if you're going to do it, I would suggest going the intermittent.
I'm also, I hear a lot that all disease first starts in the gut. Is that the reason why people say that? Because the immune system is triggered there?
Yeah, the immune system in your gut, it's like 80% of your immune system being in your gut. It's first line defense. There's something that's called leaky gut. That's another catchword right now. And what it has to do with is bacteria passing through the junctions or the spaces between the cells to get into your blood. So that's normally constructed if there's no inflammation or anything in there, so that bacteria can't get through there, viruses can't get through there, toxins can't get through there. But if you have inflammation, what will happen is those junctions, or those gaskets, I like to call them, will increase in size, and that's what lets all the toxins through and all the bacteria in that. And that's where you run into problems. That's where you run into the disease and the autoimmune disorders and the inflammation. Now, the other thing, the other side of the story is that if you have leaky gut, then more than likely you will have also leaky brain. You have what's called leaky, or the blood-brain barrier, that prevents things from getting into the blood in your brain. And if that happens, then you end up getting the toxins and that into your brain, and that's why people will get brain fog. Why they will end up getting inflammation in the brain, and then that goes into all your other disease again, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and that's the simple of it.
We don't have enough time to cover all the things I want to cover with you. So we're going to just keep doing this until we run out of topics. So we're going to take a break like I promised right now, and then we're going to come back with another segment.
Sounds great.
So hang in there with us. We'll be back in just a little bit.
Okay.